Okay, good morning and welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
We almost have full house here. And I'm Claire Say. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees at the Unitarian Universal Church in Reston. We are so glad you're here in person and also on Zoom. Great news, HVAC is being installed as well as our new monitor. So we will get the updates very soon. We welcome all online and in person. Thank you to the children that are here, also the teenagers, the adults, where you are on your spiritual journey, how you identify yourself, and celebrate whom you love. Please know you're welcome here. We hope you will join us on Easter Sunday for a very special intergenerational service on Sunday, April 17th. The service will be followed by an extended coffee hour and treats, as well as the coffee hour on the deck, hosted by the membership committee. Please look for the information in this week's newsletter. Now, I welcome Holly Anderson, our UUCR board president. She will share an update about our stewardship campaign.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I am surprised by how much I love this church. I can remember, I think it was 3 years ago, Lainey Nazare is my neighbor, and she was in my kitchen and said, "Holly, why don't you come to church with me?" And I'm pretty sure my response was, "Hell no." And then she asked me again, and I said, "Lainey, I don't do church." And then she said to me at the end, she was just telling me a story, and she said, "Our minister closes all of the services with, 'Now let's go and let the real service begin.'" And I was hooked. I said, "Lainey, I think I'd like to come to church with you." And I did, and 3 months later, I became a member. And one of the things that I really love is the commitment to service, to social justice, to racial justice. I am a huge art fanatic, so coming in here and seeing the art every week, for those of you who don't know, my stepfather, who actually just passed away a couple years ago, was African American. And so I am the oldest of 8 children. 4 of us are African American and 4 of us are white. So the Black Lives Banner just means everything to me in this sanctuary. I have found a home here. Another thing that I loved when I came was that the expectation was that everybody must serve. Doesn't matter if you clean up the kitchen afterwards, doesn't matter if you lead a committee, but everyone must serve and everyone must give. Doesn't matter how much, but there is an expectation that in the same way you support your household there, you help support the church household here. The last 2 years have been really lean, very difficult for us. We've come through a pandemic, and so we have, I think, worked very well to figure out how to do virtual, how to be a community, even when we couldn't be in person or we had to be 6 feet apart. It's been challenging, but I feel really, really good about how we have come through that. I think continuing another lean year is really appropriate, but I want to be able to accomplish 2 things. As we move toward our settled minister search, we are not quite up to UUA guidelines, and I think that will not prevent us, but I think that would not make us competitive with other churches in the area. So I want to make sure that we up that. I think that's really important. The other thing is I want to be able to support our staff. Our staff works incredibly hard. They have gone through areas where they had to be incredibly flexible, and we would like to be able to honor that and support them with that. I announced this in the stewardship gala. Because it is a lean year, I am doubling my base contribution. I'm also going to pay up front to help us with the fluctuations that we have. If you're able to do that, I would appreciate if you would join me on that. If you're not able to do that and have not made your stewardship pledge contribution, would you please do that before April 1? We really kind of need to understand our budget before we understand what we can do for the rest of 2022.
April 1 is this week.
April 1 is this week, so please get that done. If not, you're going to get some phone calls, so we'll follow up, but if you could make it so that we didn't have to follow up with you, that would be fantastic. And to date, we have received $289,207 with 92 pledges. We have 250 members, and we do have a budget that we're trying to get to 385. So again, if you have not made your pledge, I think Kara's not here today, but she's going to put the link in the chat. If you could get that done, that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay, hi again. In terms of introducing our service participants, our service today is being led by Reverend Scott Alexander. We are also joined this morning by Linda Weaver, our Director of Religious Education, who does great stories for us to learn. Cynthia Young, our music director, has amazing music selections. Jesse Leong, our accompanist, who in a month will have his PhD dissertation. Lesley Tyson, who is serving our worship associate. Kayla Williams is serving as the chat usher. Ron Bracey, Maggie, Mack, David Nemi, Mike Schmitt, and Amelia Turner are our virtual producers and technicians for our worship. Thank you all for participating in today's worship service. We really appreciate all of your hard work. Now, let us center ourselves for worship. Please take some deep, quieting breaths. Go ahead and close your eyes, too. Just really pay attention to your breaths and to be fully present. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. One more. Breathe in and out. Okay, let us enter our time of worship together as we listen to an excerpt of Lieberstrom number 3 by Franz Liszt, performed by Jesse Leong.
Well, good morning, everyone. I guess winter is not quite done with us, but maybe in a few days things will warm back up again. Our opening words this morning come from an inscription found on a sundial at the University of Virginia, slightly adapted. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty, the blessing of service. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision, but today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Good morning. Our opening hymn is hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life. If you are joining us from home on Zoom, you will find the words in your chat box, so we hope you will sing along. Those of you here in the sanctuary are invited to hum. The words are in your order of service. Hum. Yes, for now, we need to hum, unfortunately. Hopefully soon. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which of us serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Good morning. Today's chalice lighting comes from Deborah Falk. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundations of freedom, reason, and welcome, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that envisions a world flourishing with equality for all people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. The tiny flame I'm about to light is the symbol of the spark of all that is within each of us.
In our church, we recommit to each other every Sunday by singing our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this church. We sing along with a choir and congregation virtual video. The words will be in the video. Again, if you are in this room, we ask that you please only hum, but if you are at home, please do sing along.
Good morning. Good morning. Have you ever tried to balance on one foot? What happened? You probably had to move a little bit to the right, a little to the left, and keep adjusting. It's not easy to keep upright on one foot. We are working against a huge force. And what is that? Gravity, yes. Gravity is trying to pull us down and make us fall. But if there wasn't gravity, we would also be floating around this room instead and maybe hitting our heads on the ceiling, right? So life is kind of like this, trying to stand on one foot in the midst of gravity. Sometimes everything is going well. We're happy and we notice the beauty around us, which is kind of like successfully standing on one foot. Then, at the same time, there are sad and challenging things that try to bring us down. Today, Reverend Scott will be talking more about this reality that he calls a beautiful tragedy. For now, I'd like to invite you, whether you're in the sanctuary, downstairs, or in your homes, to try something with me that might help feel beauty, joy, and calm in times of tragedy and challenge. To get ready, make yourself comfortable where you're sitting, and at the beginning, you might like to close your eyes to help you focus. And now, let's take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And another in and out. Now, I should say this activity is based on a suggestion by UU minister Susan Menker-Seal in her essay, Balance in Everyday Spiritual Practice, a book edited by our Reverend Scott. As you keep on breathing, stop a moment. Feel the chair in which you're sitting, or the floor, or the bed. Notice the temperature around you. And if you're in the sanctuary and feeling cold, don't judge good or bad, just notice. Listen for the sounds of your background symphony. In other words, listen for the sounds around you. Breathe in and breathe out again. And open your eyes and appreciate the colors of your clothes, your skin, the sky, and the ceiling. Focus on appreciating the peace out of which you have found the time to be here. Remember, you are connected with everything in the universe. Take a moment to breathe and remember that connection. That is the end of the activity. However, you can do it whenever and wherever you like. Just stop, breathe, notice what is around you, and appreciate the wonder and the beauty of being alive. Now, children in 8th grade and below may join their RE classes.
Thank you, Linda. It's great to see the kids going off to their classes this morning. Now is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns with one another so that no one has to ever hold them alone. Now, if you are joining us remotely this morning from home, you may wish to light a real or virtual candle wherever you are to mark what is on your heart. As members in the in-person congregation, with Lesley's help, will come forward and light a candle for what is on their hearts. And if those of you at home would like to share something in the congregational chat, please do so, but remember that what you write is then public. And if you're at home, please read the joys and sorrows that are in the chat, and use this to enter into a time of your own reflection and prayer. And now we will listen to Jesse play the music, and members of the congregation who wish to come forward to light a candle of joy and concern may do so. have a special joy today. Birthday boy, Sterling, stand up. Sterling, it's a birthday with a big 0 after it, isn't it?
Yeah, but don't say what the other number is.
Okay. I ate the words. I don't know what they are. It's the best I could do. Let us join now in a moment of prayer and reflection. Spirit of life and love that so faithfully animates our creation, we are grateful for this community of faith which is with us in both times of joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts this morning all who are grieving, all who face loss or illness or disability in their circle. Our hearts continue to go out to all of the people of Ukraine who are suffering this just terrible, pointless loss, all caused by a dictator with a cruelty in his heart. And we pray that this may come to an end soon. Whether shared here this morning or held silently in our hearts, may our joys be multiplied in community, and may all here find comfort and calm. Amen.
Okay, we now invite you to support the work of UU Reston by making your donation, big or small, all matters, to our collection plate at the link on the side of the slide and in the chat box. This donation is separate from your pledge payment and helps support the running of our church, which includes paying our staff, that are amazing staff, the mortgage, utilities, and other expenses. Thank you for your generosity and support of our beloved UUCR spiritual home.
Our special music today is going to be sung by our UUCR choir. Yay! We're going to sing Jazz Alleluia, which is actually in our hymnal. It's around, so we hope you enjoy.
Amelia, I am going right into the sermon. This morning, I want to focus on the spiritual idea of this life of ours as being a kind of beautiful tragedy. A memorable phrase which has been rattling around in my ministerial brain now for decades. Now, I can't remember the place, time, or context when I first heard our earthly human existence described in this simple yet poignant way, this beautiful tragedy. So as I began thinking about this sermon, I went online and Googled the phrase, sure that its well-known source would pop up. But much to my surprise, nowhere in the entire World Wide Web did this pop up as a familiar, famous quotation from some notable or even an anonymous person. Indeed, the only reference when you Google this beautiful tragedy is the lyrics of a popular song by a Los Angeles-based heavy metal rock group called In This Moment. A band which, of course, given my age and stodgy musical taste, I know nothing about. I had never heard of, not to mention ever listened to, this band or this cut. And I did. There on the web, you can click on their video and hear them singing this beautiful tragedy. But I spare you that raucous music video this morning in the heavy metal style. Let me just read you the lyrics. This beautiful tragedy is crashing into me. This dying destiny, take me away. This beautiful tragedy, come crashing into me. This dying destiny, this beautiful tragedy. So lacking any other source for this phrase, this beautiful tragedy, I have to conclude I'm the one who came up with the phrase. But actually, I don't think I did. I think decades ago, one of my older ministerial colleagues in the UU tradition once said to me at some gathering, you know, we really ought to think of this life of ours as a beautiful tragedy. And it stuck with me, and now you're getting the sermon with that title, even though I don't know who first came up with that idea of life being a beautiful tragedy. In any case, regardless of how or where from whom I got it, I have long thought that this phrase is a powerful and meaningful descriptor of these mortal years on earth in which we find ourselves, all of us. Life on this earth is both incredibly beautiful while we have it, and yet unavoidably tragic, because as you all know, at some point, you have to give it up. Life is a gift of stunning and unimaginable worth, but it is also a gift you must ultimately surrender. What a profoundly vexing spiritual situation, then, we find ourselves in. Granted an impossibly holy, sacred gift, only to realize we have to give it up eventually at some point. The Reverend Dr. Forrest Church, who served the All Souls Unitarian Church in Manhattan for decades, was a leading Unitarian Universalist author and theologian until his untimely death to cancer at 51. He was a good friend of mine. We both served churches in the New York area. And he famously proclaimed again and again in his more than 20 books and from his pulpit that all of religion, he wrote, and that thus the work of our individual spiritual lives, and here's his famous quote, is based on the twin mysteries of finding yourself alive and realizing you have to die. And then he goes on, to be at home with life, we must make our peace with death. To be at home with life, we must make our peace with death. This to me is one of the most insightful things anyone has ever said about religion or life. And the starting place of Dr. Church's affirmation, the mystery of finding yourself alive, is the utter amazement and spiritual delight he took from the fact that we human beings suddenly find ourselves in the unlikely miracle of being alive in this creation in the first place. I want to quote him now at some length from his famous sermon on this subject because I think it's spiritually right on. Listen to Dr. Church's words about the holy mystery of just finding yourself here. Quote, "The odds against each of us being here this morning are so mind-staggering that they cannot be computed. We're talking miracles here. Not an unlikely miracle like God parting the Red Sea for Moses to escape, but having the miracle of water itself, in which living organisms can incubate, and the miracle of having just enough warmth and light from the sun to establish ideal conditions for life to be nurtured and developed here on earth. Look at our woods." And then he says, beyond the amazing miracle of there being life at all on this planet, consider the odds of you even being here in the morning, this morning. Your parents had to couple at precisely the right moment for the one possible sperm to fertilize the one possible egg that would result in your conception. Right then, the odds were still 1,000,000 to 1 against you being the answer to the question your biological parents were consciously or unconsciously posing. And that, Church writes, is just the beginning of the miracle. The same unlikely happenstance must repeat itself throughout the generations. Going back then 10 generations, he writes, the miracle must repeat itself 1,000 times. And going back 20 generations, it must repeat itself 1.25 million times. That's right, mathematically speaking, going back just 20 generations, We each have 2.5 million direct ancestors. And then he goes on, this remarkable pyramid turns in upon itself, of course, with individual ancestors participating in multiple lines of generations until we trace ourselves back to when our ancient ancestors, the founding people whom each one of us carries in our bones, began the inexorable process that finally gave birth to all of us, kith and kin, blood brothers and sisters of the same mighty miracle. And that is only the egg and sperm part of your miracle. In other words, dear friends, what church is pointing out is in the timeless flow of creation, there are billions upon billions of reasons why none of you should be here. Think about it. There are billions upon reasons why you should not be here. And then Reverend Church expounds further on the gift of this wholly unlikely miracle of each of us finding ourselves sitting here this morning sentient, alive in the first place. Quote, mathematically, of course, our death is simply inevitable, whereas our life hinges on an almost infinite sequence of perfect accidents. And then Forrest goes on to tell the true story about how one of his dopey paternal ancestors, an adolescent pilgrim by the name of John Howland, fell off the Mayflower, fell off the boat in the middle of the cold Atlantic, and against all odds was saved by other shipmates throwing him some sort of lifeline, leading to Reverend Church's unlikely birth, the son, unlikely as it is, 10 generations later, of a U.S. senator named Frank Church, his dad. Think about it. Church concludes, the ancient universe was pregnant with us when it was born. Do we have that little video clip? We don't have the video clip. Okay, I had a video clip that of Dr. Church, and he's in this, he's summarizing his heartfelt conviction that with our birth, we've been given this remarkable gift with infinite possibilities, and if any of us don't seize that opportunity, we're fools in creation. And it was a beautiful little clip. I'm sorry we don't have it. If you Google Dr. Forrest Church on videos, you can see the clip. It's one of the few that's up on the World Wide Web about him. But Dr. Church, Forrest, developed esophageal cancer in his late 40s when he was just at the prime of his career. And as he faced his own tragic death, which would come in his 51st year, just like his father, Frank Church, died at 51, and Frank Church's father died at 51, he was nonetheless able to fully affirm the unlikely blessing of his just being alive. The last time I saw Forrest was just weeks, but it was at the Fort Lauderdale General Assembly of the UUA, and just weeks before he died, his body was down to little more than skin and bones from the disease, yet still he carried that warm and radiant smile of his and was fully engaged with his family and friends who had all come to be with him at GA. And he seemed genuinely grateful for the chance just to hang around creation for a bit longer. His final book, entitled Love and Death, completed just weeks before he died, he wrote this: every day we live is a miracle, rich with possibility, even when right off camera, the boom is about to fall. To this miracle, he goes on, we must each do everything in our human power to awaken in gratitude. Awakening is like returning after a long journey and seeing the world for the first time, really seeing our loved ones, our cherished possessions, and the tasks that are before us to perform with new and grateful eyes. And then Church goes on to write more about his quiet appreciation. Think of little things: reaching out for the touch of a loved one's hand, shared laughter, a letter to a lost friend, an undistracted hour of silence alone with our thoughts until there are no thoughts, only the pulse of life. For this fleeting moment, our life becomes a sacrament of praise. So for Reverend Church, our life itself is a beautiful tragedy, a wholly unlikely blessing, even though we must all someday surrender it. And thus we arrive at the second important spiritual half of Reverend Church's theological observation about finding yourself alive and realizing you have to die. After acknowledging how precious and amazing the gift of life is, we arrive at the all-important and unavoidable realization of life's, well, there's no other way to say it. It's a stunningly tragic dimension. The physical truth that in this mortal universe, despite the rich tapestry of life that is set before us at birth, we all must someday die, surrendering in an instant, usually, everything we know and love. 1 minute, we are participants in this absolutely amazing tapestry of life, and the next minute, well, we're gone. And this, my dear friends, is indeed the towering reality of earthly existence that every religion must and does spiritually address. If there were no death, maybe there would be no religion. Every religion must somehow answer the reality of death if it is to properly come to terms with and find meaning and purpose in life. Now, as I'm sure you all understand, most religions answer the tragedy of physical death with a belief in some sort of continued existence after our bodies die. As one author puts it, whether it is in some peaceful paradise, a hellish land of punishment, or simply a continuation of the soul or essence in new life, this continued existence, most religions promise, is known as the afterlife. And then this author goes on, most religions have detailed descriptions of what we can expect after death, as well as how our time in earth affects this afterlife. In other words, most religions answer death by promising that death is not really final, not really complete, not really total, and that life, in fact, continues past death in some form of pattern or reality or configuration. Many religions promise their believers that because they get to remain as a presence in creation, in some sort of discrete, conscious, spiritual entity, that death is not totally real. This is what many religions promise. For example, most Christians and Muslims answer death by believing that they will have an afterlife lived out either in heaven or hell based on how well or properly they lived on earth. And most Buddhists and Hindus similarly answer death by believing that their human souls will be reincarnated into another life, also based, karma, on how well or poorly they have lived. And countless other religions found around the globe similarly promise some sort of continued existence for the believer. But most Jews and Unitarian Universalists, and now I shift the theological discussion a bit closer to home, most Jewish people and UUs tend to answer death not by imagining themselves as being able to consciously continue past death as some sort of distinct spiritual entity, but rather the Jewish tradition and UU tradition teach that we should focus on how well and lovingly we are able to live our lives while here on earth, and we put our hopes for continued life based on whatever spiritual legacies, emotional legacies, are carried forward as the creation moves on without us. Listen to this poem by Ron Trammer, which I recently used at a memorial service at the family's request for a dear relative of mine who died this year. And here's the poem. I knelt there at the headstone of one I loved and cried. Name with date of birth and death were perfectly inscribed. I pondered these two dates and how little they both mean when compared to the tiny dash that lies in between. The dash serves as an emblem of our time here on the earth, and although small, it stands for all our years of life and worth. And our worth will be determined by how we live each day. We can fill our dash with goodness or waste our life away. To ourselves as well as others, let's be honest, kind, and true, and every day live the way we know God wants us to. May we look for opportunities to do a worthy deed, to reach out with compassion to those who are in need. And if our hearts are full of love throughout our journey here, we'll be loved by all who knew us, and our memory hold them dear. Oh, the video is ready. Well, why don't let me just finish the poem. And when we die, these memories will bring grateful, loving tears to all whose lives were touched by the dash between the years. So let's look at Forrest talking about the gift of life. Oops, get a little more volume. Technology? Yep, okay. Technology is your friend until it isn't.
And staggering that this grace is just this thing saying, wait a minute, you not only can have something, you do have it right there. Put away your shopping list of grievances. Look out your window. Gasp for air at the extraordinary wonder of it all, and then recognize that the world doesn't owe you a living. You owe the world a living, your own. Go out and give yourself away, and I'll be there with you. The Spirit is powerful that way.
So, for most Unitarian Universalists, the kind of afterlife we talk about is what theologians call the lasting immortality of influence. That if you live your life well, as Forest Church was saying, there is a lasting immortality of what you've done. The idea is that we mortal human beings live on not in some sort of concrete, embodied, conscious, or eternal way as some sort of distinct or definable soul, but rather we live on in the noble legacies of love and spirit that we leave behind in the lives we have touched. So in our UU faith tradition, which again is very much focused on the duties and joys we human beings have right here, right now, while we have got a hold of life, that death is ultimately answered, and life is therefore made full and whole and meaningful simply by how fully and joyfully and well we live our lives on earth. And the image that I constantly use to talk about this is if you're at a still pond and you take a stone or a pebble and you drop that pebble into the calm water, it ripples out. You've all seen that in a pond. And the pebble is like your life. Your life is immersed in creation the moment you're born, and as you live, how you live ripples out and affects the entire creation and the entire pond. The Dalai Lama has thus written, "Just as ripples spread out when a single pebble is dropped into water, the actions of individuals can have far-reaching effects. Let me speak personally just for a moment. As one Unitarian Universalist, I take real and great comfort from my long-held spiritual belief that the way I choose to live purposefully and well now on this earth will, God help me, like the waves from a pebble dropped in still waters, it will ripple out past my mortal years and continue me to affect the sum total of creation in a life-giving and positive way. I was once interviewed by a conservative Christian radio host in Vero, and when I described this eschatology of mine, she said, "Oh, I pity you. I know I have eternal life in the breast of Jesus, and all you've got is this vague idea about how your life was rippled out." And I just thought to myself, well, I'm glad you're going to be at the breast of Jesus, but I'd rather think of my life as a pebble that ripples out forever. And she was really a jerk. That's, and I just looked at her. You know, I've been thinking about theological things for 30 years, and here this radio host was telling me that I was completely wrong. I love the way Forest Church affirms this by saying that it is the love that we live out in our lives and our love alone that survives death. And I quote him now, that love is the key piece of the immortality of influence. He wrote just before his death, "About life and death no one knows, but about this we surely know. There is love after death. Not only do our finest actions invest life with meaning and purpose, but they also live on after us. 2 centuries from now," he writes, "the last tracings of our being will yet express themselves in the little works of love that follow bead by bead by bead in a luminous katina, extending from our dear ones out to the world and then into the next, strung out by our loving hands." And then he goes on, "When we ourselves die, the love we have given to others is the one thing death cannot kill. Only our unspent love dies when we die. Love unspent because usually of fear. It is fear that locks love in the prisons of our hearts, there to be buried with us." And then Dr. Church ends, "Will my love live on forever? I believe so. And your love too. It will certainly live on after your death, continuing to touch from heart to heart to heart, long after you have gone. We know from experience that our indifference, our cynicism, and hurt feelings leave only a little mark. But live love, and someone, somewhere, will remember." Let me end this morning by bringing all this just as close to home as I can. Despite all my efforts to imagine it otherwise, I am no longer a young man. And lately, I know it. As I approach my 73rd birthday this spring, my own personal mortality is much more vivid and real to me than it once was. For the last several years, I have lived with the medical knowledge that both my pancreas and kidneys are permanently damaged, due, I think, to chronic dehydration that, as a result of my being an endurance athlete, biking across the country in the desert for days on a time. And anyway, I damaged both my pancreas and my kidneys. And while I am blessed still with overall good health, and as far as I know, I am not staring death right now directly in the face, this medical condition of mine has powerfully reminded me that, well, I'm not going to live forever. I have an old friend back in New Jersey, Rob Stone, and he took me out to dinner. I was there helping to close a church, actually, in Plainfield, New Jersey, and he took me out to dinner, and he's my age, and he said, "Scott, you know we're both in the fourth quarter," a football image. And what brought this up is he and his partner are building a new house in Asheville, North Carolina. He said, "Scott, what am I doing? I'm in the fourth quarter." And I said to him, "Well, yeah, but you're maybe not in the 2-minute warning." So I'm in the fourth quarter, and I'm keenly aware that my wonderful, amazing, and charmed life on this planet, this grand mystery of being that I have hold of right now, is not a gift I am going to have forever. And a quick aside here, the older I get, the more my life is occupied by what I call my congregation of ghosts. The beloved ghosts of so many I have known who are now dying. I just received word of another friend who's close to death, a younger woman than I, actually. Hardly a day goes by when I'm not visited by some of my Casper-friendly ghosts. Memory of all those spirits. These ghosts don't haunt or trouble me. Rather, they live with me every time I remember them in kind of a holy, joyful remembrance. And I imagine some of you are similarly visited as you age by more and more ghosts. In any case, I know that some of you in your 80s and 90s, and some of you are here this morning, you're saying, 73, what's that? Come on, stop your whining. You're only 73. I'm 89. Well, you got me there. I know that some of you were saying, you want to feel real mortality, Reverend? Just wait a decade. And I hope to have the chance. But with all this said, I want to tell you that my life at this stage has taken on a keen and not unhappy spiritual awareness of what Forrest Church powerfully affirmed when he said that life is all about the twin mysteries of finding yourself alive and realizing you have to die. There is in my life these days a quiet richness, not a melancholy or existential sadness, like one of my friends, Dr. Eugene Pickett, described in his later years. He said, I've got kind of a melancholy about having to give this all up, but rather a quiet richness that I know I did not fully notice when I was younger and was not so existentially cognizant of the eventuality of my own departure. Now, well into the 7th decade of my earthly journey, I am more organically aware of life's profligate beauty and grace, and the twin reality, its absolute fragility. And so without any conscious effort or intent, I now savor more fully my time with family and friends. I take more satisfaction from work and exercise and service and reading and relaxation and sleep. I delight in the eager and radiant faces of children and the infinite charm and diversity of everyone I meet, even the curmudgeons. Nature seems more vibrant and holy and welcoming to me, and I am so grateful, despite the increasing limitations that come with my aging, for what my body and my mind can still do well, pretty well. To me, in this 73rd year of my existence here on earth, it's a beautiful, tragic, amazing gift. And I do not resent or begrudge a single dimension of it, most especially its eventual mortality. For I am alive today, a sentient and satisfied creature of this earth who miraculously finds himself free to live, and as Forrest Church said, most importantly, to love and to be as best I can, and dare, I hope it, leave the world just a wee bit better than I found it. And I take great comfort, dear Reston friends, in believing that after I am gone from these familiar earthly haunts, after I can no longer see a wood like that one, the ripples of my human life, the vibrations of my love and whatever decency and care I was able to express to the world will reverberate out even to the furthest stars. And that for me, at least, is eternal life enough. And I wonder about you, is that eternal enough for you? And I say and mean to you this day, Amen.
Our closing hymn today is hymn number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All. If you are zooming in from home, the words will be in your chat box, so please do sing along. And those of you here in the sanctuary are invited to hum. Life is the greatest gift of all the riches on this earth. Life and its creatures, great and small, of high and lowly birth. So treasure it and measure it with deeds of shining worth. Mind is the brightest gift of all, its thought no barrier mars. It seeks creation's hidden plan, its quest surmounts all bars. So it rains the wind, it chains the storm, it weighs the outmost stars. We are of life, its shining gift, the measure of all things. Up from the dust our temples lift, our vision soars on wings. For seed and root, for flower and fruit, our grateful spirit sings.
And I leave you this day with these words of poet Arthur Davidson Feige. And though I die, I have for an hour been alive, aware of what is to be. The high majestic hills, the shining sea I have looked upon, and meadows golden green, the stars in all their glory I have seen, love I have felt. This poor dust that is me has stirred with pulse of inward liberty and known extremes of hope and all in between. Can the small pain of deathbeds, can the sting of parting from accustomed haunts of earth make me forget the bounty of my birth, or cancel out the grateful wondering that I have known exultance and the worth of being myself, a song that dark powers sing.
Today called Sing, 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 and I hope one day soon the congregation can join us in this song. The words are sing, 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 let everybody sing. Sing, sing, sing with all the love you can bring, for life is short. Don't waste it away. Let everybody sing.
Thank you so much for that. That's your sermon. We can be love pebbles, so start thinking about that. Because words of gratitude also matter as it touches the brain and the heart. Those of you that are online, we want to also appreciate the usher was Mark Shepard. The greeters were Chris Topoleski and John Wilson. And also the financial stewards are David Slater and Henry Collins. So again, if you have some words of gratitude and appreciation, please put it in the chat. We will also invite your congregants to attend worship on Zoom, to join us with a virtual Greet Your Neighbor coffee hour today to discuss the service and what's going on in your life. You have to do it right now, right here, be present. Also enjoy your fellowship with other congregants. The link is in the chat box and will also be on the next slide. Those that are here in person, we invite you to have some coffee or tea and join us outside on the deck to socialize and discuss the service theme. Also, any words of appreciation to all of our volunteers and our staff would be appreciated. So, we will leave the chairs here. So enjoy your week with our ever-changing climate, and please stay safe. Take care.